At 6:21 p.m., September 26, 1985, in Orlando, Florida, there was a miracle. For the first time in history, a baby killer whale was born and thrives in the care of man. Come share our joy.
Sheriff's Office.
We need SO to respond for a dead person at Seaworld. A whale has eaten one of the trainers.
December 1973 saw an opening of a new theme park in Orlando. This theme park would be known as Seaworld. This park would open due to the success of Disney in the same area, except instead of Disney characters or something, this park focused on their animals, having lots of animal shows and exhibits. They opened up with their still standing iconic attraction, the Sky Tower. This giant tower would allow you to see all over the park. 1976 saw SeaWorld getting bought out, and just a few years later, this new owner added the Flamingo paddle boats, which are also still here. In 1983, they opened up their next stadium, and only a year later saw them open the Shamu Stadium, another iconic area. With all these new additions, the current owner was having financial issues, which in 1989 led them to be bought out by Busch Gardens, which is still their current owner. In the next 5 years after this, they would open up 2 more stadiums, the Sea Lion and Otter Stadium and the Nautilus Theater. This year also saw SeaWorld opening their first major attraction, Wild Arctic. This simulator was themed to an Arctic base, saw you traveling through Antarctica. After the ride, you got to explore the base and check out all the different animals and other things they had at the base. This ride being placed in a weird part of the park is not very popular, and not many people do it anymore. Just a year after Wild Arctic, being owned by Busch Gardens, saw the release of Journey to Atlantis. Now with that being said, my friend Coaster is going to take it from here.
Come 1998 saw the release of the world's first Mack water coaster, Journey to Atlantis. This first-of-a-kind ride model saw riders board a 4-row boat which held 8 riders, with 2 per row. The ride starts with the dark ride section, showing you being put on a tour of Atlantis. But once you make it there, a siren greets you, but only to trick you. After going up 2 chain lifts after you go outside, you go down the first drop, going into a splashdown, which is the iconic moment of the ride. After going around a turn and another splashing, very tiny drop, you go into a 3rd chain lift, which takes you through the Sirens 2 to another drop. It has a few turns, and this brings you into another splashdown. With the huge success of this ride for SeaWorld Orlando, 2 more were made at the other SeaWorld parks as San Diego and San Antonio, each being different from each other in many ways.
Just a year after the success of Journey to Atlantis, SeaWorld drew their hands, or I should say tentacles, at another ride. This gigantic roller coaster would be themed to the folklore of the mythical Kraken, and it would be 153 feet tall, featuring 7 inversions. Come June 2000, the all-new Kraken would open. This B&M floorless coaster was located right next to Journey to Atlantis, and was quite a huge success. This coaster starts with a tiny little drop out of the station into a turn to the right. Then after this turn, you go into the chain lift. After this chain lift, there's a tiny little tree drop with a turn to the right before the massive drop into the gigantic vertical loop. After the loop, you go into a dive loop, and then right afterwards, you go into a 0G roll, which leads you into this coaster's Cobra Roll, which is my favorite element on the ride. You then take a turn to the left before going into the mid-course brake runs. After these mid-courses, you take a little drop which slightly brings you to the left, and then you go into a vertical loop, which afterwards brings you into a tunnel, which you take a corkscrew right afterwards. And after that, that's the end of the ride. 21 years after this coaster opened, and it is still the only floorless inside of the entire area. Right after this ride saw the release of SeaWorld's first sister park, Discovery Cove. In 2006, SeaWorld opened their 3rd coaster, a kiddie coaster called Shamu Express. This coaster was based around SeaWorld's at-the-time star, Shamu, who was a killer whale. Anyways, this coaster has a simple layout featuring turns and little ups and downs. There's not much to it, but it's a nice, good coaster for the kids, albeit a bit rough. In 2008, SeaWorld opened their other sister park, Aquatica, which was a water park. 2009 saw the next major coaster for SeaWorld Orlando. This coaster would be a monstrous 140 feet tall B&M flying coaster, which would feature a layout with 4 inversions. The coaster would be known as Manta, with the tagline, "Ride the Flying Ray." This B&M coaster would soon open for the 2009 season. It featured things such as a dual loading station and a switch track. This coaster would be themed to the animals known as mantas, which are similar to stingrays. This coaster, 12 years later, remains as one of the most popular coasters at SeaWorld due to its placement right by the entrance of the park. Some iconic moments is the swoop right off the mid-course brake runs, which has a splash effect, and it is very, very, very close to the entrance pathway, so you can easily see it right from there. This coaster also has a very distinct entrance with some stellar rockwork, some waterfalls, and a very beautiful manta sign, which features a manta on it. Come May 22nd, 2009, people would finally ride the Flying Ray. The coaster starts off with a drop to the left, which brings you into the absolutely massive 98-foot tall pretzel loop. This loop brings so much forces on your back, and it's definitely the highlight of the coaster. Next off is a turn to the right, which is pretty nice, and that goes into an inline twist. After this twist, you take a pretty nice turn to the left before taking a turn to the right, which brings you slightly upwards into another inline twist. After this part, you go into the mid-course brake runs, where you go into the part I talked about just a little bit ago, the amazing swooping turn. This part is just really cool, especially if you're in the right seats. After you take another turn to the left, which is pretty big, and then you go into the final inversion, which is a corkscrew. You then take a turn to the right before hitting the brakes. Overall, this coaster was a huge success for SeaWorld, and people still ride it all the time to this day. It's not my favorite coaster at the park, but it's definitely not a bad coaster. At a lot of parks, this would be a highlight attraction, but at SeaWorld, this is just your average supporting coaster. 2012 saw SeaWorld's next major addition, which is Turtle Trek. It began with you going through this aquarium where you could see underwater view of manatees, fish, turtles, and even more kinds of animals. You would then get your 3D glasses and enter into this dome with a person in the center. The person would talk to you for a bit before beginning the show. This show shows what it's like to be a turtle in the modern day, including the turtles hatching and going to sea, exploring the ocean, and finding your family. At the end, it shows the message, which is to make sure you never litter and always clean up after yourself on a beach, which I believe is a really good message for a kind of ride like this. With that being said, I love this very nice and heartwarming show, and me and my friend typically see it almost every time we go to the park.
2013 saw SeaWorld's newest dark ride opening, Antarctica, Empire of the Penguin. This ride uses trackless technology, which makes it quite interesting. Trackless technology means the cart itself is guided through magnets within the floor of the attraction. It features a mix of screens and real sets. This ride is located in the newly built Antarctica area, which opened with the ride. It also features penguins after the ride in their own exhibit, which you can go to without riding the attraction.
Today, Orange County Sheriff's Office and Orange County Fire Rescue responded to a report of an injury at the Shamu Stadium. Units got on scene and realized that the victim in this case was deceased.
2013 was quite a mess for SeaWorld. If you couldn't tell already, Blackfish came out at this time. This documentary, focused mainly around SeaWorld, was talking about the captivity of killer whales and how when they were in captivity, there was lots of incidents with them having injuries to people, including some that have been fatal before. Incidents like these had never happened in the wild before, which really motivated people to try and get a stop to it, because they believed it was SeaWorld's fault for these injuries. Which it could have been, could have not been. There's still not really proof or anything, but I'm not going to put much of a comment on that. But with the release of Blackfish, SeaWorld attendance dropped quite a bit, and they still have never fully recovered in attendance numbers, and there are still people almost every time I go there protesting outside for them to release their animals. For 2 years, SeaWorld lay dormant. They didn't really do anything, they just kind of existed. They did stuff at their other parks, such as the two Busch Gardens parks, but SeaWorld was just kind of there. It was a mystery what SeaWorld's new attraction would be and when it would be coming out, but come 2015 saw a major announcement. 2015 saw the construction of Seaworld Orlando's newest coaster. This coaster would be no other than Mako, Seaworld Orlando's newest project with B&M. People quickly realized that this would be a hypercoaster model. The Mako would stand at a height of 200 feet, making it the tallest coaster in Orlando when it was made, and it still stands at that today. This coaster would be based around the Mako shark. It would have purple track with blue supports. SeaWorld pretty quickly announced this coaster with a 2016 opening date. It came with a cool animation for the trailer which showed sharks hunting, particularly Mako sharks, before saying some text and then showing the coaster in a rendered format. This is a pretty cool trailer, I'd gotta say, but I've seen some that are quite a bit better before. Come summer 2016, the Mako opened. This coaster would feature 7 points of airtime, which is fantastic.
Got it.
This coaster also has a killer soundtrack, especially on the lift hill. Alright, sorry about that, it's just such a vibe. Anyways, Mako, it's a great hypercoaster by B&M. Even have my own POV of it up on my channel right now if you guys want to go check it out. It's playing right now in the background, and I'm going to use it for the in-depth on the layout, which I'm going to get started on right now. Out of the station, you go out of a turn, and then you go into the chain lift. After the 200-foot chain lift, you go down the first drop, which gives some killer floater airtime. Not long after this turn, you bottom out, and then you go into an overbank turn to the left. This turn gives some nice lateral forces and even a little bit of airtime if you're lucky. Next, you go off into the massive 5-second airtime camelback, which is just insane. It's probably the best part of the ride. Then you go into a Hammerhead Turn, which brings you back to where you were going, but the opposite direction, before you hit another floater hill. This hill might have a trim brake on it, but the trims do so little to you, you still get airtime. You then go into another hill, which while you're bottoming out, you go into a turn to the right, which then brings you into the speed hill, which is one of my favorite parts of the ride. It's pretty unique to B&M Hyper. And then you go into the mid-courses. These do slow you down, which is kind of a shame, but you can deal with it. You then go into a little floater airtime hill, which doesn't really provide much airtime, before taking an overbank to the right, which gives some very good lats. It's right over a pathway. Then you go into an overbank on the left, which ends with a swooping turn also to the left over the lake, before you go up into a little pop, and then you hit the brakes. Overall, this is a great coaster, and it is definitely my number one currently. Except that might change whenever I go to a few different parks this year or next year. But I'll save that for another video. Overall, Mako is one of the best B&M hypers. It has one extra redeeming quality known as its butter smooth. There's not a single little bit of rattle on this coaster, which makes it just that much better. For the 2017 season, Seaworld Orlando added VR on the roller coaster Kraken. They themed it to an underwater exploration base and renamed the ride to Kraken Unleashed. This has some pretty good CGI, and I want to show you guys the full video since I really like it. There is only one thing though. Sadly, the next year for the 2018 season, due to it taking too long to dispatch trains, Seaworld Orlando got rid of the VR on Kraken. Anyways, with that being said, here's the full VR POV. 2017 saw the construction of a new ride at Seaworld Orlando. This would be a new-gen intimate river rapids ride called Infinity Falls. It would feature multiple river rapids sections, an elevator lift, and at the time, the world's tallest drop on a river rapids ride. This ride opened for the 2018 season to great success, and is still the most popular ride at the park to this day. It's a pretty good ride, and it gets you soaked almost every time. I would definitely recommend if you're going on a hot summer day. In this next part of the video, I have my friend Christopher27, so here he goes.
Finally, in 2019, Icebreaker was built. It was planned to open 2020, but COVID hit and closed the park temporarily. Finally, recently, they announced its release date of February 2022. This coaster is a Premier Rides Skyrocket model. It features a multi-pass launch, a junior scorpion tail, a top hat, and some airtime moments, which look pretty good. This coaster fills up SeaWorld's launch gap, ejector gap, and family coaster gap. Overall, this is a great investment for the park and will hopefully be a great ride when it opens.
Alright, that's it for coaster. If you guys want an in-depth video about this coaster, it's already up on my channel called Why Icebreaker Will Be Overlooked, so go check that out if you want to see it. Alright, well that's it for this in-depth history look at SeaWorld Orlando. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, for I've been working on it for over 3 weeks, and I've put lots of effort into this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I post quality coaster content all the time, including off-rides, POVs, reviews, speculation, and more. If you like anything I just mentioned, you will sure to be loving my channel. Make sure to subscribe, and that's it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.
Talk to you, money when they tell you want it back.